Welcome to this week's live stream, where we will be creating a winter landscape. We're continuing with this theme of 3D doodle, creating a complete project from scratch, starting from nothing to a complete render. We're going to be doing that in 2 hours. That's what I mean by doodle. And today we're continuing with the winter concept, the winter context, and we're looking at this lake scene. So I'll jump over to actually look at the image that we'll be creating. Whoops, this one right here. Yeah, so I do have to say though that the chat has been particularly interesting and fun today. The pre-stream chat. If this is your first time here, we keep the chat open. We open the chat an hour before the stream starts, and you're welcome to pop in there and just hang out with us, ask random questions or talk or whatever. But we had my favorite part of the pre-stream chat was when we decided, like, if we were to create a Blender or computer graphics themed restaurant, what would the names of the dishes be? So I thought that was particularly fun. There were some good ones in there, and I think for the XP points, I'm trying to get in the habit of like always providing some way for you guys to participate and get some XP by answering questions or I don't know, doing something interactive. I'm going to ask at the end of the stream, and I'm telling you now because if I forget, remind me. But at the end of the stream, I want you guys to have a dish idea ready to go. Something to do with computer graphics, cleverly tied into some sort of dish. And I want you to post them in the chat, and I'm going to go through. You'll get, I think, like 10 XP points, maybe 15, somewhere in there. Let's just say 15. Let's be generous. 15 XP points just for providing a dish, and I'm going to give double that, 30 to my favorite. So yeah, be thinking about that. I think that's kind of a fun thing that blossomed from the pre-stream chat. Yeah, but what we're here today for is to create this I call it a lakescape. I don't know if I'm making that word up, but it's basically a landscape featuring a lake and it's winter themed, snow on the ground, and a forest. And so the interesting parts about this project, or what I think you'll find interesting, kind of the nuggets to take away, is we're going to be creating a dense forest, as you see here, but we're going to try and do it as fast as possible, as efficient as possible. Because if you look at this and think, wow, are we going to be modeling, trees from nothing, and do everything else within 2 hours? No, we are going to fast track this, and I'm going to show you how. But this should, I hope, strikes you as a passable, believable environment, and you can, hack your way there. So I think creating a believable forest in a quick kind of hack sort of way. Also, we're going to be exploring volumetric fog. It's very simple, but we're going to be exploring the volumetric BSDF and apply that to an object to have very controlled fog inside of our scene. Let's see, anything else? We are going to be doing a little bit of displacement. What do you call it? Adaptive displacement on the ground. And yeah, we'll start off finding some reference images because spoiler, that's how we're going to get our trees. But yeah, I always need to remind myself to look for questions. If you have questions, shout them out. With the question prefix, just write the word question in all caps followed by your question, so I can spot that in the chat a little bit easier. If this is your first time, welcome. I certainly have a lot of fun with these. There's a lot of familiar faces in here that I think I can say they also have fun because they keep showing back up, and together it's just a good time together, good 2 hour span in the week. So yeah, we'll start first with some reference. All right, so I did base this off of an image I found. Well, I could have sworn I found it on Unsplash, and when I was trying to find it today to kind of walk you through, my process of finding images, because that is pretty important. Question. Oh yeah, Malholmesy, you asked before the stream started, what about a class or workshop? So I sat down last week and started writing a new outline because I got confirmation of what I was afraid of. The system that I've told you guys about, the official class system, unfortunately is not going to be completed in the first quarter of 2019. That was my goal. That I lobbied for that, and there's just a lot of things going on. We have one developer. We're actively trying to hire another developer to work on Blender Market, because right now we have one guy split between the both of them, and we are no shortage of ideas for what to do with the website. So developmentally, that idea is competing with a lot of other ones, and you have to end up breaking down like time and budget. And so currently, since we have a Frankenstein system that has worked well enough, for now, I'm going to run workshops for the foreseeable future as we have previously. And so when I got confirmation on that, I started brainstorming a new one last week about basically trying to lay out everything that I know about shader creation with Blender and creating complex node materials and all the bits and pieces that go with that. So I am planning that, and I was thinking March, but then it struck me that the number one priority at CG Cookie right now is to redo all of our fundamentals courses, Blender fundamentals courses, re-record them with 2.8, so that when 2.8 comes out, you guys can hit the ground running with the core knowledge of Blender, how to do modeling, how to do texturing, shading with Eevee, and cycles. Let's see what else, like animation, rigging. We want to do all of those over again with 2.8. So that's the number one priority, and because of that, like right now, 2.8 is supposed to land in March or April is the latest that we've heard from Ton. And so if that's going to happen, I kind of backtracked on, well, maybe I don't want to run a workshop the month that 2.8's coming out and we're supposed to be releasing these fundamental courses. So anyway, that's kind of a long answer to say I have started planning the next workshop. I just got stuck on when it should go out. So I would love to do March or April, but just bear with me. I need to figure out a little more logistics, what's possible. Because like when I do a class, that takes a significant chunk of my focus, and I don't want to have to split that between the massive 2.8 release. Let's see. Question, are you looking for a web developer and are open to applications? Okay, awesome. Looks like Wes responded to you there. Do you stream at night or mornings only? We've always streamed, pretty much always streamed at 2 p.m. Eastern time during the day. So it's like my early afternoon. I've thought about doing a night stream. I do kind of want to experiment just because I'm sure a different audience would be able to show up, and I would like to offer that to other people. It just, for me personally, I have kids and a family, so I need to work out with them. Like, can I take the night to do this, or, to make those logistics work together. So if you're interested in a night stream, maybe say, yes, I'd like to see a night stream. That would work better for me. And if I get influenced by you, maybe I'll schedule one of those soon. Unfortunately, I think like the regulars who come to the 2 p.m. maybe won't be able to make a night stream. So when I think about that, I'm like, I don't know. I'll do that later. I kind of stopped thinking about it. All right, I think I've answered all the questions. Oh, yeah, that's true too. Like everyone's got a different time. For Pavel, this is a night stream. That's a good point. When I was looking to do streams, I was researching like what's the best time to stream, and the answer I kept getting was there is no best time, because your audience, being the internet, is going to be international. It's a different time for everybody. Just be consistent with your time, and people will get used to that. Is kind of is the advice I was able to find researching. But anyway, I would like to try a nighttime if it's okay. So Miranda, you like this one? Me too. 8 p.m. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe I don't need to push for the night stream, but I am curious still, regardless. All right, so yeah, that's the workshop. That's what my plans are for the workshop. And back to the lake environment. So yeah, I was telling you that when I was trying to find the winter shot, the winter photograph that I was referencing, I could have sworn I got it from unsplash.com, which I told you about recently. It's become one of my favorite free and public domain image resource. And I was looking up everything like winter lake, and I was scrolling through these images and I could not find it. And so what I did, I thought this was kind of funny, is I right-clicked on my render and searched Google for this image. And sure enough, this is the one. So visually similar images, this guy right here. And as I followed the breadcrumbs to this random blog, and luckily he's nice enough to credit the original author. Right here, it was in fact on Unsplash. So I was right, and it confirmed that my image, my render, is fairly close to the original. So I thought that was kind of fun. And this is the one that kind of inspired me. I loved the fog. I like the atmospherics. I like the blue. There seems to be a little bit of like, it's the right amount of treatment on the end. Like I assume this isn't raw from the photograph. They probably took it to Lightroom and tweaked a little bit. So it has that nice amount of treatment, but not too much. And I like the pseudo symmetry involved. And anyway, yeah, this one stuck out to me, and I wanted to. It also fit the bill for like the doodle concept. Like what kind of scene? I mean, an environment is typically very complex. What kind of environment can I create within a 2-hour time frame? So this one ended up fitting the bill. This is what we're going to use. And I'm just going to download this image. And let's see. I'm just going to create, just like I did last week, I'm going to create the project directory from scratch. So where is it? Projects, Projects Blender, Lakescape. And we're just going to add a new one in here called Live. And I'm going to take that image. Copy it, and I'm going to paste it in a ref folder. That's kind of typical what I do. So now I can open that in Blender and we can get started. Okay, so there's a little bit more discussion about the stream time. This time works for me, works great for me, just after work. Here's a good question. I've wondered if what people think about this. So since you upload these to YouTube anyways, what does it matter exactly when you stream? So the value that I see in the stream is that we are interacting, you know, and I hope that would be true, and it has been true. The people who show up regularly to the live streams, like we've gotten to know each other, you know. Questions are asked that you maybe wouldn't fit on a tutorial question or wouldn't fit in a YouTube comment. So it's built up the community in a way that I hoped it would. And also live interaction means if I'm doing something and you have a question, wait, what was that button right there? It's the most immediate kind of clarification that you can get. So the fact that it is live, I think, is where the majority of the value is. And posting to YouTube is just kind of to show like, hey, this is what we're doing at CG Cookie, you know, get the info, but also a lot of people are benefiting from the live aspect of it. So that's what I think is why the stream does matter, and the fact that it being live. Possibly night streams. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got our reference image, and we're ready to open it up inside Blender and get started. So I'm just going to, pretty typical, I don't need animation, so let's get rid of the timeline. Pull up a window down here. This is going to be our another 3D view, so I can swap that. D is the hotkey to go to 3D view, and then open up another little panel. This is going to be our reference. Very tiny, but you know, we'll work with it. And image editor, let's open that image. Aaron, you're definitely one of the regulars, one that I like, that we've like built. We've got to know each other, so I'm glad that you like the streams. I certainly have enjoyed interacting with you. You know, having a lot of jokes. That's one of my favorite things, is the inside jokes that we develop, because we have some clever people in here, and that's I learned stuff too, like add-ons. People say, hey, have you tried this add-on? I've never heard of it before. So anyway, it's a very mutual, good situation in the stream. I look forward to it every week. It's becoming one of my favorite things. All right, so what am I doing? Yes, looking for live streams, projects, Lakescape, live ref. There we go. This is the one I want. So it'll be nice just to have it inside Blender so we can reference it as we need to. It's a big one. It's a doozy. I forgot how big the image was. All right, so this is going to be a cycles render. It's not going to be Eevee. I wish I could do Eevee. I don't know. I need to test Eevee a little bit more. In my experience, Eevee does, like, there's a line where Eevee is great in real time, but then there's also, when you cross that line, it becomes very slow. Almost worse, well, basically worse than cycles, because it slows down my entire machine. Like Chrome starts, the UI starts to be slow and sluggish. So whereas cycles, like, it's very contained, the render itself is slow, but not the rest of the machine. So I mean, I've got an old machine, 5 years old, so I don't know. Right now, I'm a little bit limited with being able to explore Eevee as much as I want, and especially in the stream context where I don't want to bog down the machine and the stream lags because of it. We're gonna roll with cycles, and I'm also just more comfortable with cycles a little bit. But all right, so I'm switching to cycles, the render engine, and I also want to make sure that my performance threads are set not to take up all of my CPU, but just to, like, take 10 out of 12. Yeah, someone said it's like a security blanket. It is true. I've been playing with Eevee more than ever, like, recently, and I haven't taken to it so naturally like I kind of hoped I would. It is different enough from cycles that it's like, whoa, this is slowing me down. Maybe I'll just do this with cycles because I don't mind waiting a few more minutes. But I think Eevee, as it progresses, we all will get to learn it better, and I'm certainly going to make it my job to teach it as well as possible so that we can get up to speed with Eevee faster. I'm just easing into it, I guess. So yeah, we've got some technical things set on the render side, and first thing to do, let's create the landscape, right? So these little islands here, we're gonna have one on the right side of the screen, one on the left side of the screen. We also probably will need to use our camera. We'll set that up pretty soon. Let's just go ahead and do that with the camera. I'm going to set, let's just Alt R and G, so clear rotations, clear translations. I'm going to rotate X in 90 degrees. Okay, you can't really see that, but all I'm doing is putting the camera on the y-axis exactly. So it's looking directly down the y-axis. I'm just going to set up the scene that way so I can think, when I'm looking at this image, I can better translate to 3D space that the left side of the image is going to be the left side of our 3D space, the negative X axis. And then on the right is going to be positive X. Back and forth is going to be Y. Just kind of orienting myself properly, because that can be a hindrance if you don't think of that ahead of time. And it's kind of natural to be left and right being the X-axis, green being the front to back. Question: Will there be a sculpting stream? This is my first time watching. Yes, absolutely. So the beauty of streams is that the topic is kind of limitless. I've done sculpting. Individual sculpting projects before. I've done entire classes built around character sculpting. It just depends. I also do hard surface modeling. It's kind of all over the place. We do film reviews. We do like focused lectures on certain topics that like you need to understand conceptually without pressing the buttons in Blender. So I love that about the stream. It's a wide variety, but we absolutely will be doing sculpting. I mean, since it's one of my favorite things to do, we'll probably be doing it sooner rather than later. But yeah, definitely stay tuned. Question from Aaron. I missed one. Let's see. Hey, Kent, you have any idea if there's going to be a sort of add-on for Blender similar to ZBrush or R3DS? I've never heard of R3DS. Is there going to be an add-on for Blender similar to ZBrush? When I hear that, I kind of think you're asking, is Blender's user interface going to be made more similar to ZBrush? And I mean, Blender is a pretty respectable sculpting package as it is, so I wouldn't imagine people would try and copy ZBrush's approach over to Blender. I hope I'm understanding your question correctly. But I mean, Blender has a very robust sculpting system already built in, very competent. So I'm not sure why anyone would create an add-on to mimic ZBrush other than personal preference. Let's see, did I miss any other questions? Eevee rocks, you just need a new computer. I know. you'd think like Jonathan Williamson gave me the green light, like it's time to update to get a new computer. You would think that green light would be enough, but yeah, I just haven't been able to fit in getting that new computer yet. Also, I'd have to be giving up OS X because I don't like how they're running stuff now. And I don't look forward to transitioning operating systems. Just seems like a headache. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling at this point. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Aaron, for saying you're going to want to add the question prefix. I know it's a rough around the edges system, but we are trying to implement, instead of a full class system, we are trying to at least implement some upgrades to the live stream format, stuff like official questions that I can, answer and check off rather than doing this question prefix nonsense. I was talking about the ZWrap add-on. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was a typo. I love answering questions that I completely miss the context, miss the understanding. Let me look that up. ZWrap add-on. What does this do? Allows you to automatically fit a pre-existing topology to your models with an easy-to-use interface. Oh, okay. So it's I've seen this kind of thing before, where you take a very good head mesh, like one size fits all head mesh, and then apply it to scans. Pre-existing topology to your models. Yeah. So it's basically a way to fast track, auto topologize a head mesh. I can only imagine that someone will create this for Blender in the near future. Yeah, I mean, that would be my guess. I don't know for sure, but it seems like low-hanging fruit to be able to create that. And I don't think ZBrush is like the inventor of that approach. I feel like it started with a SIGGRAPH paper or something. I've definitely seen it outside of ZBrush before. All right, I'm going to try and focus for a minute and actually get this project underway. So I've talked about setting up the camera and orienting the world to correspond to the reference image. So next, usually the first thing to do is get rid of the default geometry. I actually kept the camera this time around. Maybe move the camera just slightly up because I'm going to use the grid floor. That's going to represent the ground, or in this case, the lake surface. So for a lake surface, I'm just going to create, let's say, a circle. It just needs to be a flat plane, but for some reason I want it to be a circle and not a square and have these random corners. So we're going to scale pretty big. Now, I'm not the biggest subscriber to building everything to scale because it's just, I don't know, unless it makes entire sense to build something to scale. Like for a project like this, I'm not going to go through the hassle of it. So I am just going to build this thing, maybe move this stuff back. I kind of want the center of the world to be, the center of the lake here. So I'm not building this thing to scale. It's not a deal breaker in terms of the project. So if you like to build things to scale, that's totally fine. I'm just not gonna do that. And all right, so we've got a lake surface. Next, we need to create the surface of our topology, our topography, the ground surface. So I'm going to add how am I going to do this? I think I'm going to start with a cube. And I'm going to hit Control-3 to apply a subsurf modifier. All right, and then I'm going to apply that. Let's see, by doing that, object convert mesh. All right, I'm just trying to get a blob of digital clay, essentially, because we will be sculpting the surface. And from here, maybe scale this out. This is looking funny. It's okay. This can be dirty. It doesn't have to be perfect. So Alt S. All right, something like this. Doesn't matter that much. And from here, I'm going to start sculpting on it. Control A, make sure my scale is applied. All right, scales are all set to 1. Awesome. Well, I say that, and then I'm like, well, it's not even close to the size it needs to be. Let's look at our camera. In the bottom right, I'm going to hit the 0 hotkey on the number pad. I'm going to move that off to the left because this is going to be our land. So let's scale it up. Kind of looks like Looks like a nipple a little bit. That's funny. Let's move this off, kind of frame our image similar to our reference. All right, something like that. Excellent. Now we can start sculpting. What about generating an ant landscape and sculpting it? So I've heard of an ant landscape, but I've never dealt with it before. Is that within Blender? Is ant stand for something within Blender, or is it a separate program? Like I know there are several world generator programs that will create terrain, but I mean, it's going to be so quick to do it here. I'm just going to, you'll see how quick it is. I'm going to switch. I also like matcap view instead of the default studio view. There's just a lot more shadow information, light and shadow information. So now we can switch to sculpt mode on this object. Actually, now I need to apply the scales because you can see scales are wonky. And if your scales are not set to 1, you're going to have weird issues when you're sculpting, all right? So the way to set that to 1 and maintain your dimensions is hit Control A and apply the scale, in case you didn't know that. Now we can jump to sculpt mode and expect normal behavior. I'm going to grab, actually, no, I'm not, because I have to plug in my Wacom tablet. I'm going to sculpt with the mouse because this is a hacked workflow. This is just get there as fast as possible. Yeah, Ant is included in Blender add-on. It generates terrains. See, you learn something new every day, and this, I mean, that's already a plus for the stream, value in the stream. So let me look that up, Ant. Okay, so it must be included with 2.79 and before. I've never actually used it. I need to look up the Ant terrain generator. It's not quite made it into Blender 2.8, I guess, but I do need to check it out. So for now, I'm just going to go with the sculpting approach. That's, I'm definitely, for whoever asked, are we going to do sculpting? Here's a tiny taste of it. We're going to use dynamic topology, but, all right, and then clay strips. Bring back my tool panel, clay strips, and it's literally the easiest thing. Let's turn off symmetry. All I'm trying to do is make it a rough surface, not even, but make it gradually a decline from a top of a hill, a small hill on the left side, gradually decline towards the water surface. So very, very simple, just making a bunch of strokes, building up on the back side and making it come down to the bottom. Yes, I am a long-term Wacom user. Look up Ant with periods. It is in Blender 2.8. Thank you, Jake. In hindsight, I kind of wish I would have used this because I teach sculpting all the time. I try it. I need to expand my horizon sometimes and I know Blender is such a vast program that I've not used everything in it. So I kind of wish I had done the Ant approach. I'm not going to try and learn that right here, right now, because there's a lot that we got to do in this amount of time. So I'm going to stick to the workflow I know, but that is pretty cool. I need to check that out for sure. All right, so at this point, I'm just kind of creating, using the water plane, the lake plane. I can very easily start to build out an interesting terrain, or at least that's the goal. And I think I'm going to change my dynamic topology detail size to 5, just so that's it has a little bit more density. We can keep an eye over here in the viewport, like our camera view. And if you guys have watched much of my training, you know that I do not like. Let me see, where's my camera? I want to select my camera and turn off the passepartout. Where is it? I have it selected. I'm in object mode. That must be. There we go. Okay, so you cannot select the camera when in sculpt mode. That's kind of interesting. Viewport display, your alpha, passepartout, the alpha. I want to make that completely black. I don't like seeing what's outside of that. All right, so now we have a truer frame of what our render is going to be. And we'll continue just sculpting this shape out. think the hill is maybe, actually, now that's looking pretty good. I was going to say it looked too steep, but I take that back now that I compare it to the reference that's directly above it. All right, so I'm kind of trying to eyeball where the terrain should end. I think something like this. You actually don't need a lot of, I don't need the terrain to be super bumpy, or with extreme crevices, stuff like this. You don't need that to be in there. It's actually, topography is often, hills like this are pretty subtle. So you don't need much sculpting, in other words, to create the right effect. And then from here, I can go to object mode, simply duplicate this around, rotate it 180 in the Z axis, and then move my other side of the terrain. Maybe move it forward just to offset those a little bit and make it not so symmetrical. There we go. And it might look good enough. You might not be able to tell that it's a rotated version because the back side of this one is now the front side. But I mean, I'll just touch it real quick. Because based on the reference, the right side is significantly flatter, but it's just reference. I'm not trying to match it exactly. And I didn't create it initially with the intention of being able to Google search it and find my original reference. But that was kind of cool. All right, maybe I can definitely break up the shoreline for certain. Now, if I want to move the shoreline out or in, it would be helpful to turn on symmetry and lock the Z axis so the points cannot be pushed down or up. And re-enable dynamic topology. And now from any angle I can kind of push around the shoreline and it will maintain its current height. All right, that's looking kind of cool. Although now we have some of it peaking above the surface, so turn off the Z lock, bring that down. Very cool. Let's go back to our other cube object. Bummer, you can't like select in the outline, in the outliner. So do I have to? What about alt clicking? Does anyone know if I can stay in sculpt mode with 2.8 and switch to different objects? It doesn't seem like that's possible. I have to go to object mode, select this one, then back to sculpt mode. That's kind of a bummer if that's the case. Am I missing any interesting convo or questions? Doesn't look like it. Cool. All right, so we've got our terrain set up, like really easy, just like that. Next, what we need to do, we're getting to the point where we need to start creating the trees. And yeah, I guess, I don't think I'm missing anything. Yeah, I guess we're just going to start creating trees. Now, my approach for trees is using alpha image planes. So the limit, well, let me explain first if you're not aware. So you can take an image of a tree, add it to a plane, and use Blender's particle system to populate the entire surface of an object and get a forest very fast. And since you're using image planes, you don't have to, it's a lot less production on the trees themselves. And it creates a pretty convincing look. No, I think you have to select both objects before you enter sculpt mode to be able to work on both of them. Ah, okay, that would kind of follow suit with the ability to like do multiple objects in edit mode. So if I select both, do sculpt mode. So it actually seems like despite that one being selected as well, you can it's kind of the same method of only being able to manipulate the active object. I should probably save the scene. Let's go to live, create a new folder and call it SCN for scene. Let's call it live Lakescape 01. Download pictures of trees. Yes, so I kind of hit the jackpot with this one because I started the project not knowing what I was going to do for trees. I kind of expected to crop them out of photographs, you know, but actually I struck the mother lode over at Pixabay. So let me, oh, real quick, Matthew Ulray, awesome job. This was last week's project during the stream, which was creating an icicle image. And Matthew went and did it. So I love that you did that. It looks really good. We talked a little bit about the drips. So you said you might address that. But anyway, good work. I love that you did this following last week's live stream. So good stuff. Where were we? All right. We got the photo. That's right. Okay, so now I'm going to pixabay.com. This is another free public domain image depository. And if we look for, I think tree silhouette was the magic search term. So if we look that up, we do get some images that are, well, true silhouettes, meaning it's just a black, hard silhouette of trees. But it would be ideal if we had a little bit of color information. We can always crank it down to black if we want to make them silhouettes, but I would like the option to have some color information. And as we scroll down, I believe I will see trees soon. Is it this one? Yeah, so this user right here, Deedster, it looks like a she perhaps. She has created like 3D renders of a bunch of different trees just by themselves, and they're on alphas. So the mother lode. I love that she did this. Thank you, Deedster. This explicitly helped us in this project. But yeah, if we look through this, we can find a number of trees. Now, I do want to keep them appropriate. So, you know, a palm tree obviously is not appropriate, and I don't think a cherry blossom tree necessarily is going to pop up in a forest like this. But these, however, will. So I want this one. I'm going to open it up in a new tab. This guy, probably this one too. Let's see, any other ones? It is winter, so I'm trying to find some scrawny leafless trees as well. Like that one, but I think there's a color version of this one. But this kind of tree, this one, these are all like the type of evergreens that you would find in a scene like this. And I don't need fall. I don't want them to show up quite so much. I think I use this one too. Let's see. What do I have? What do I have so far? I don't know if I do want to use that one. It's a little too dense, perhaps. All right, so the variety here is going to help a lot. The more tree options that you have, the less repeatable it will be. So if we look at the render itself, a negative is the fact that this particular tree right here, you can see how it's skinny, and then the top branch kind of is an angle. It looks like if you turn a golf club upside down. You can see that repeat several places in the image. So if someone studies it long enough, it is noticeably repeated. So the more options that you have, the more trees you download in this situation, the less noticeable it will be. Just something to keep in mind. All right, so we've got a little bit, you know, like this tree is way too bright. Like it looks like a tree in spring. So I'm going to need to desaturate those, but we can do all of that within Blender. I feel like I'm missing. I don't have any scrawny trees like this one, for example, like as in leafless trees. So I'm trying to find some. I know that I've used that she has. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for. Any other ones I might want to use? I think this will probably be good. Well, let's add this one. It's just another variety to the evergreens. All right, cool. So we've got a bunch of trees here. Let's download them. I'm going to download the... we don't need them to be massive. I think this will be fine. The 1381 by 1920. Let's... I'm going to view it. All right, I'm going to remove the red. I know I said I don't want fall colors. I'll just remove that in the shader nodes. Let's save the image. Where have I been recently? Lakescape live. All right, so I'm going to create a new folder. Let's call it texture or TEX, and then this is going to be tree A. Download this one. Well, actually, I'm not going to go through each one of these. I'm just going to copy them because I've already done this. So image, let's see, Winter Lakescape texture. So all of these trees, I'm just going to go ahead and copy them and paste them over in the live folder just to avoid watching me download that stuff. I'm going to keep both since I already had a tree A. Let's just call this tree, well, it probably is a duplicate. Okay, no. Oh, that's right. This is the original A. So we'll call this one EF. All right, now we've got a collection of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trees. That should be enough variety to make for a believable forest. Check on questions, see if I've got anything. Pavel isn't into the landscape stuff. That's understandable. Cool. All right, we've got a collection of trees now. I'm going to plug this into Blender now and get our card system set up. So switch over to Blender. A card is simply going to be a plane, simple enough. Tab into edit mode, and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. Also move it up 1 unit so that it's sitting perfectly on the ground plane. All right, this is going to be a tree is going to be textured right onto this guy. And to set that up, should be pretty easy. I think, let me use this image editor and transfer it over to a UV editor. And let's see, I'm going to open the image first. Texture, let's go with tree A. Excellent. It looks like the UVs are already laid out by default, so that should work fine. Now if we switch over to our shader node, our shader graph, add a new material and call it tree A. I also need to start naming the objects in my scene. Let's call the tree object tree A. The cube, let's just do that real quick. Island A, or island right. Island left. And I probably will duplicate one to the back side as well, but we'll do that later. Maybe, let's see, I'm going to put the tree itself I'm going to move it to a collection. New collection, call it trees. That's going to be important because the particle system will look for that, will source randomly from the trees inside of that collection. So that's going to be important. All right, tree A, I just need to add a input texture. Nope, I'm sorry, texture, image texture. And let's grab tree A. All right, so the color will go into base color, and then we need to also add a color a shader mix shader. And transparent BSDF. All right, so we're going to use the alpha channel here, which if we look at this in rendered view, we can see that that tree. We can see the alpha and then use that as a factor so that the black becomes transparent, which means transparent BSDF goes in the top slot. All right, there we go. Simple as that. We have a nice little tree. If we turn off our overlays, you can see that's what it is. All right, so the red leaves I want to get rid of. I might just desaturate the whole thing. Shade, is that what I should do? Yeah, I think so. Converter, color ramp. I'm not color ramp. Color, hue saturation. and desaturate it entirely. Let's just leave it at that. So there's no more red leaves. Zach said, I've never tried a pre-release build, but since it's so different, I want to start learning it. Yeah, that would be my encouragement. I mean, there's so many people diving into 2.8. It's got such hype right now that it's at least fun to explore 2.8, and it is going to be the future of Blender. So, you know, it's certainly not now too early to start getting used to it. All right, so we've got one tree down. We can, let's create the other trees, I think is what I need to do next. So back to the 3D view. I'm going to move these off to the side because I don't want them to actually be rendered. But we can duplicate this and call it tree B. And load up, well, duplicate the material. Make a corresponding tree B material. I know I had 6 of them, right? So let's just go ahead and duplicate that process. Tree C. Material, tree C. Tree D. Tree D. Blender tree D. Oh, whoops. All right, I don't want to just rename the material. I have to remember to duplicate the material first. I've messed up so many materials that way. All right, tree E. And tree F, I believe, was the last one. All right, so with those created, I can now set up their materials. It's just going to be, they're all duplicates, so it's pretty much a matter of just swapping out the image texture. Here's the second tree. Here's the third and fourth. Wait a minute. 9 users. Why are 9 users using tree A? Oh, because, Anyway, distraction. There's our trees so far. All right, what am I at? Tree D is what I need. Now tree E and tree F. All right, you guys still with me? Is that you following along? I know we lost Pavel. I don't know if everybody's like, this is super dull, man. Why not use import as image planes? Why wouldn't I do that? File, other than just not my first thought. The import image planes. Is that an add-on? Import as image planes. Yeah, I've used this before. Well, let's try it. Let's turn it on, and so if I just hit import as image, texture, let's see, did that do exactly what I needed it to do? Do they all have their own materials? No way. Tree F, tree E. Holy cow, that's exactly what we needed it to do. Yeah, why in the world did I not do that? Other than I don't use it that often. Oh no. So I tried to select all the objects and tab into edit mode to edit mode them all together. But Blender crashed. So let's open that back up. I probably hadn't saved it in a while. Well, now we know we can save a ton of time by doing the image plane trick. Let's try first. Is there a recover last session? No. What about recover autosave? What was that at 14:47, 3 minutes ago? All right. So yeah, we're back in action. Yeah, that I mean I've used it before, but if you can relate it all to me, there's so much in Blender that it's impossible to keep all of it at the forefront of your mind. Since I don't usually do image planes, I don't remember. I don't know if the last time I ever used image planes for this situation for creating a forest, but I don't use cards too often, and yeah. Anyway, I've used it before, but just I do feel pressure. Like I should know this stuff. I'm a teacher. You know, you guys are watching me do this. I should know every little thing, but I'm also just a human. I forget a lot, especially with such a big, expansive program. So let's just remove all of this. Maybe even revert to. Well, no. So I'm going to get rid of those materials because, yeah, the image planes trick did all of it. So what I'm going to select all of them, each one, and hold Shift and hit X. And you can see that adds the 0 to the material, which means there's 0 users. And when I save the file now and file revert, that will clean all of the materials. So now we're back down to the base material. And I forgot who suggested it, but two thumbs up on the suggestion for using image planes, import as image planes. Let's re-enable that because I'm sure it didn't stick. And file import as image planes. There we go. And what's nice about that is it aligns the planes to match the image, which is great. So I can move these off to the side. Only thing is I do want the origin to be at the bottom of each image plane. So instead of, let me save it. And I'm just going to tab. I don't want to risk crashing again, so I'm not going to tab into all the objects simultaneously. Let's just hit one at a time. Ah, bummer. And I'm just going to eyeball it for the sake of time. Move it up so that the origin is at the bottom. Because the particles will grow the particles will grow the cards from where the origin is at, and I don't want half of the tree to be buried in the ground. That's why I'm doing that. Doing this. And it named everything properly. That add-on did exactly what I wanted it to. All right, so now if we look at those image planes in rendered view, that is perfection. Excellent. Oh, I didn't know you could do Shift-A image. Wait a minute. Is that just another spot for it? Whoops, Shift-A. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's in the import menu and in the what'd I do? Weird. All right, let's save the scene. That's cool to know. So you can also you can go to File Import or go to Shift-A Add Images as Planes. I feel like this is common knowledge that I just have overlooked. Question, I know the cloth sim got a rework, but did the particle system get one also? As far as I know, it did not. At least based on this project, the particle system is as I expected. I didn't see anything different about it. So if anyone else knows that something I don't, please inform us. Yeah, I think I've gotten a little bit better about the saving. Aaron, you mentioned that during the car live stream, y'all were yelling at me in the chat with all caps to save, and it took me forever to actually save the file. Good memories. That was a good time. Question, should we designate a save police squad for every stream? Where are we? Right, so something that I can see right away is we don't have a light source in our current scene. We have the default world, which is just a gray color. So it's time to add an actual world, and we're going to do that with something you can probably guess. Again, thank you, Deedster, for these images and making them public domain. Kudos. Let's go to hdrihaven.com. And we're going to look for nature, but also I think there's a partly cloudy and overcast. Let's do overcast. Yeah, so this is going to match more the image, our reference image here. So yeah, I mean, well, it's mainly fog, but we can assume that that is an overcast kind of day. So we're looking for overcast, and we're really not going to see any of this environment in the render. So it just needs to be, it can be, we're flexible here. In other words, we can pick, if there's anything like a lake, I mean, that might make sense. Yeah, I don't know why I'm even taking this much time. Let's just use, let's use this one. Again, this really does not matter. I'm going to download the 1K version. And let's go move that to our project directory. Downloads, and where are we at? Grape here. Copy it. Put it in the textures folder. Perfect. All right, so now we can add a world. Well, use a world. Convert it to use nodes. I still don't know why we have to do that. But color, let's use environment texture. And now open that image. Excellent. All right, so now we see that there is, in fact, color on all of our trees. And I want to desaturate and remove most of the color. So on these materials, let's click, I've got this one selected. I just want to desaturate it slightly. So converter, color ramp. Well, I'm trying to think now, do I have to do this in each material, or can I get away with doing that in compositing? I feel like some of them at least need to be done in the material itself. So let's go ahead and do that. Texture, golly, color, hue, saturation, and value. Saturation down to 0.5. You can see that it toned down the green there. This guy, let me just copy that hue, saturation, value node, paste it over here. All right, I want to desaturate it entirely, but then also crank down the value to like 0.7, maybe 0.5. Yeah, I think that looks good. Next tree, paste our hue, saturation, and value. Excellent. I don't want there to be too much variety in the color of each tree, so that's why you kind of see me doing this. I don't want this tree to be particularly green by comparison. That looks good. That one's fine by itself. This one, and this will be the last one. Yeah, I think that looks good. Question, what time zone do these start? They are Eastern, they're 2 p.m. Eastern US time, Eastern United States time. All right. All right, so we've got our trees. Let's actually make them grow on the surface of our terrains. What do you say? It's about time we did that. An hour into it. We're making okay time. All right, so the way we're going to do this, save the scene first, and I'm going to go ahead and iterate up. So instead of version 1, let's go to version 2. And what are we going to do? I'm going to select the left island and add a particle system. Click New in the Particle System tab, which is this nondescript, I don't mean to say nondescript, but it's this little icon here. We're all still getting used to the new icons, I think. If you hover over it, eventually it'll say particles. And we're going to make it hair, all right? Because hair makes it very easy. Let's turn on advanced. Hair makes it very easy to swap in these image planes. Now, remember I added the the non-image plane import version to its own collection. Let's do that here with our fresh image planes. Hit M as the hotkey and add it to the trees collection. Because with our particle system, if we go to, I think it's render, yeah, render as an object, not as a path. We can go to the object options and choose, oh, wait a minute, it's not object, I'm sorry, it's where'd that go? Render collection, that's what we want. So now we can select that collection, trees, and they've been populated. We're on the right track, but we have some issues. Scale for one is way too small. There, you can see them though. Woohoo! We got trees. The scale, let's, how are we gonna figure out the right scale? I'm looking at the camera view now. Let's open up our reference again. Image editor. We lost our reference. All right, so the trees are actually much taller than I kind of imagined in my head. Let's go to 0.5. Let's increase the randomness too. Yeah, I think we might need to be at like a scale of 2. All right, excellent. So let's try this. However, the planes are not pointed directly at the camera. We need those planes to point directly down the y-axis right here. And we have this rotation option as long as we enable advanced. If I turn that off, you can see we don't get a rotation option. Click on advanced, and now we get velocity, rotation, physics. So let's enable, here we go. I think it's object aligned. Is this what it is? In the velocity, object aligned in Y? Is that right? Maybe that's not right. Because that's saying millisecond. I'm trying to remember what is it rotation in general? Okay, yeah, orientation axis global Y. Nope, global Z. Global X. Okay. Okay, I think I do remember this. I'm going to go with global Y because all I need to do is rotate each of these. Edit mode is giving me some crash problems. Bummer. All right, let's try this again. Where did I save it last? No particle system. So what about the autosave? Yeah, that was just 2 minutes ago. That's probably a decent chance. All right, we've got our particle system. That autosave comes in handy if you you doubted it. All right, let's go back to render. Let's try and set this up again. And be wary of edit mode for right now. Go to the particle settings. What did I have? I think the scale was set to like 2, right? Okay, and I was trying to get the orientation axis properly oriented. Rotation. Is it, what about object Z, object Y? Okay, so I remember it being global Y and object Y are the same in this scenario. So I'm going to save this and then try to go to edit mode. Hold your breath. Ah, nuts. So I think we've discovered that going into edit mode on a particle, on an object that's used in a particle system is no bueno. So I guess I'll just turn off. What if I just turn off the particle system? Yeah, that's good enough. All I need to do in this scenario is I'll just use the cursor. Only, let's see, 3D cursor, because that should be at the center of the world, which should align with the origin, and I can rotate in X. Seriously? Yeah, of course that wouldn't work. Sorry. Shift S, cursor to selected in object mode. Now edit mode, rotate in X, -90 degrees. Does that do what I want? When I turn on the particle system again, are any of these facing up? Okay, no. They're facing down. All right, so pardon this quirkiness, but let's go back to edit mode and rotate 180 in X. Now I think we should, okay, yeah, now they're starting to face up in the right direction. All right, so did you kind of hopefully followed slightly with the fact that I'm changing the orientation, the rotation in edit mode to get it to stand up properly? Turn off, I need to do that for all of these. Save it. Maybe it'll let me do 2 edit modes at a time. No. For whoever was asking or was wondering about getting started with a pre-release version, just be prepared for that kind of thing. Question, did you apply rotation to the planes? So the rotations have come as default. If we add a plane, so by default, if we look at the objects, if we turn on, where is it, viewport display axis, you can see that by default it matches the world. So Z up, Y backward, and then X left and right. So I have only been rotating the plane in edit mode, which maintains the orientation in object mode. You can see that? That's what I've been doing. So I've been keeping all of the rotation axes aligned to the world. And that's helping me, be able to figure out what I need for the particle system itself. So we'll just go one by one to avoid crashing Blender. Now I should be able to use the 3D cursor. I don't have to snap it anymore. Go 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, and 90 degrees. That one did not seem to do correctly. Here we go. Okay, let's turn on the particle system again. Did I miss any other questions? All right. Where were we? Turn on the particle system. Excellent. So now they're all facing the right direction. If we hit if we go into rendered view, you will notice that there's a problem though. We're getting alpha issues within cycles, and the reason for this is because we have a limit on the transparency bounces. So if we go to our render settings, I assume engine settings, go to light paths, our transparency is set to 8. And this means that we can see 8 alpha transparent objects in a row, but everything after 8, we do not see the transparency. So we have to bump this up like all the way to the top, which is I think 128. All right, now with 128, we have we see all of the alpha. We see all the alpha. We can see through everything. So now we've got a pretty densely populated forest, actually. Let's see what that looks like, in the full context of everything. Maybe the scale is a bit high. Maybe we can dial down the scale. I wonder if we could also maybe rotate. Oh, that's kind of interesting. All right, I think it's a little, I'm thinking through the density right now, and I think it is much too dense. Let's go, do we have any children enabled for one? No children, excellent. I think the number 1,000 is a little too high. Also, Oh, I think I know why. So we have trees growing from below as well. We have, when you do the particle system, it's growing from the entire surface. So we have trees, if we look in wireframe, that are growing from the bottom of this island and growing up through the top. I'm pretty sure I had a reason for not doing just a plane. But at this point, we need to define a vertex group to be able to determine the density, basically tell the island not to grow trees from the bottom. So I'm going to go to local view, tab into edit mode, and I'm going to select the bottom half and create a vertex group in our object data, vertex group, let's call it density. Invert the selection, and I'm going to assign a weight of 1 for these vertices, so it only grows out of the top. Now when we go back to the particle system and vertex groups, we can tell the density to be the density group. All right, this will maintain the same number of particles, which is set to 500, still too many. That's looking a little bit better. I think there's a question, I missed a question or two. Does that mean that if we have 129 transparent objects in the last one, it won't go through? I think so. Yeah, I wonder if you can go higher than 128. Oh, you can go higher than 128. Sorry, for some reason I thought 128 was the max. I know why I thought that, because if you go to full global illumination preset, it'll change everything to 128. So for some reason I thought 128 was the max. So I guess, yeah, if you have 129 planes, then you'll want to enable, or you'll only go higher than 120. You'll want to go to 129 or higher, sorry. Okay, maybe I think I'm trying to fine tune now that we got the density set up, that's where I'm at. With the density set up, we can start to fine tune our particle system. I'm just kind of looking at it to see how it strikes me. Something does not feel natural about it right now. So let me think what we can do. We have options, some really nice options actually. Inside of the particle system, I think inside of collection, or in the, well, with rotation, should we randomize? I'll leave it as a little bit randomized. We can, anytime we want to see just a different phase. Oh, look at that. That's weird. Huh. Forget that. Let's go back to our render option. I think, yeah, so we have this cool option for use count. So if we enable that, it's pretty nice because we can basically tell it which trees do we want to see more of. Sorry, I know there was another question. Real quick, I'll come back to that. Yes, so Wilco, couldn't you just rotate all objects and then apply the rotation? Yes, I could have. That would have been faster. That is a good suggestion. Question from Matthew Ulray. Is it because the particles grow in the Y, should the reference be laying down? Yes, apparently it should be. I don't know why. I thought it would be the Z-axis, but I guess it's Y. And maybe you can change that somewhere. There's usually more than one way to skin the cat. Yeah, so this seems similar to setting up custom bone shapes, custom control shapes for bones. Yeah, it's wrapping your mind around local orientation axes, and yeah, it can get a little bit cumbersome. But that's where I just kind of have taught myself to like troubleshoot stuff, rather than sometimes I don't fully understand like why is this not aligning, but you just you mess with stuff until you get it, kind of thing. What was I doing? Oh yeah, we were talking about, that's right. We were talking about favoring certain trees over others. So if we look at our, I'm going to move these guys a little bit up. Oh, now I can rotate them in X. Wait a minute. I'm so silly. So rotating in object mode, like the particle system respects object mode. Like me rotating in object mode. That seems, oh man. Edit mode is really messing me up. Really messing Blender 2.8 up. Gosh, I have 45 minutes. I hope this doesn't mess up the project. That is frustrating. Wow, so I haven't saved for a little while. I did, the autosave was just a minute ago. Thank you, autosave. I did not so yeah, we were talking about how object mode relates back to, okay, so what I want to do now is just look at the trees. I want to be able to see my source trees, and they should be rotated up. So I'm gonna have to troubleshoot how this works. If I tab into edit mode, hey, I went to edit mode and it didn't crash. Rotate X 180? Is that gonna do it? I think that's the right way to go about it. All right, so I'm rotating all of these backward. Sorry, bear with me. I didn't anticipate running into this, but I say it a lot, especially now. Like, so much of computer graphics is just problem solving, and here's a great example, like figuring out the orientations to work the way I want. Okay, so I've got those rotated the other way around. And what does that leave us with? So it's the opposite. So then let me try. Can I change that in the particle rotation settings, global Z? Global X? Global Y. All right, I'll just stick to global Y. I guess this means that I need to this is kind of racking my brain. I mean, so is this what I need to do? That must be what I need to do. All right, now I am kind of lost for why this is working and why it wasn't working previously. But I think we've reached the end of the confusion. Well, rather, it's going to be workable. I don't necessarily know why. All right, so now I should be able to see. Okay, there we go. I can view all of my trees rendered. And the reason why am I doing this? I'm kind of losing track of. So if we go to rendered here, yeah, okay, so we can favor certain trees to show up more than others. And if we look at our reference, there's a lot of tall, skinny trees like this one. So if we go back to the particle system settings, which tree is this? That is tree E. So we can go to tree E inside of collection use count. And for tree E, we can increase that count. And if we keep going up and up and up, we'll see more and more tall trees. I wonder how high, like, what does 30 look like? Yeah, so we're swapping out, and that's already looking a lot more like the reference. A lot more like the reference. It kind of makes me think the density does need to be a little bit higher. All right, so are you guys still with me? I know I've kind of been messing up. Displays the notice that he doesn't have have the crashing problem when switching to edit mode when he doesn't have a render view window up. That's okay. So I suppose that's why it keeps crashing so often, but I kind of need the render window. Well, that's good to know. So maybe that is the cause. At least we kind of know. If you're working on your own and you get those crashes, it must be because of the render window. All right. Can we do this in 40 minutes? We should be able to. We should be able to finish the rest of this. All right, so it is looking more like the reference. However, because we're favoring this tree so much, well, let's go through a few others. How about this one? Let's increase the frequency of this guy. In particle mode, that is tree A. All right, so something about tree A, I think it needs to be smaller in general. I see a really big one up here, and it need to be a little bit smaller. All right, so you can see that just scaling in object mode works fine, whereas this guy probably needs to be a little bit taller. And okay, so this is where we can talk about, oh yeah, this one. That one definitely needs to be smaller. Now we're getting a more interesting forest. I want to increase the density, the number. Let's go back to 500. Since we're using a lot of skinnier trees, it makes sense to need more of them to create that dense forest look. All right, that's looking pretty decent. I think the overall size maybe is a little too high. Where's the size? Here we go. Scale. How about 1.5? Not too bad. While we're at it, let's go ahead and we'll certainly save the file, and we can simply add this particle system over here, create new, and then swap out the data. How quickly we get a nice forest. So this is where we remember I was talking about you want to avoid tiling, noticeable tiling or repetition. And now you can see that the one tree that we're using a lot is causing that. So the best option for me to do is to find another tree like this. But something else we can do is simply Shift D to duplicate it and rotate it 180 degrees. So now it's at least flipped. And if I think we should start to see them going different ways. Is that not working? Oh, maybe I need to increase the, yeah, what I'll do with this one is increase its frequency as well. Its tree, since I created a new one, I need to refresh the collection, and we'll bump that up to like 20. Okay, now that's going to help a little bit. It's like the smallest measure I can do to combat the repetition. And then let's see, what else? What if I create, like, just duplicate this island? Wonder if I rotate the whole island if all the trees continue facing forward. That's pretty cool. All right, so now I'm going to have a background as well, which I like. That'll certainly help. We don't necessarily see that too much in the reference image, but I do like the idea of having that in the back, giving it a little bit more depth. I'll go ahead and save to a third version, maybe ease some of your minds. I know that it's stressful. All right, so I'm going to scale this one up. I want it to be just in general, like almost like a mountain in the background. So scaling it up, it means I'll probably need to create a unique. We'll also scale it up in Z. Nice. All right, so now we've got a mountain in the background. Just kind of offset it, breaking up the symmetry slightly. All right, so since I've adjusted it that much, I need to make it its own particle system. So I'm going to duplicate it, particle system O2, and what I can do is increase the frequency, whoops, 1,000. Maybe like 2,000. And even more than that, 4,000? We're getting crazy. Yeah, so at 4,000, we have a very full background mountain to serve as a nice backdrop. All right, so we've done a lot with the trees, and since they are card systems, obviously this is still running fine in real time, so it's very efficient. And once we add the fog, it's going to make all these trees not blur together like it currently is. So I think it's time to add the volumetrics. Let's save the file. A crazy question. In the last 5 minutes, can we replace tree.png files with cats.png and see how it looks? We can totally do that. Yeah, we'll get crazy for the last 5 minutes. Remind me, because that could be pretty funny. What are we doing now? Yeah, let's talk about volumetrics. Well, first, let's build out a little of the rest of the scene a little bit, primarily adding a material, a proper material, not particle system, whoops. A proper material for our pond or our lake. All right, principal BSDF is going to be fine. I'm going to make the metallic all the way up to 1. Specular down. Wait, why am I not seeing reflection? Oh, because the specular is, the roughness rather, is set to 0.5. How about 0.01? All right, so now we're getting close to, well, we have a at least reflective surface for our pond. And now when we add the volumetrics, we'll be a little bit closer. Volumetrics might look weird without the pond being reflective. All right, so the volumetric is just going to be contained inside of a mesh UV sphere. Alt-G to move it to the center of the world. This is going to be very big. And this is how we're going to get very custom fog. Because if we look at the reference I think is quite interesting. You can see very clearly where the fog ends and where it gets very thick. So that's why I opted to use like a volumetric sphere, because we can control where it falls off very carefully. Whereas if we just use like a mist pass, we wouldn't get quite so, we wouldn't have as much control. It would just be based on the depth and nothing else. So that's why I, in order to create a very similar effect, I want to use this sphere. So, you know, we can kind of move the sphere into position and see like where the fall off is going to start. All right, let's go with that and switch our material, create a new material for this one, call it fog. And the type of material is not a principled BSDF, but it is shader volume scatter, I believe. Or is it principled volume? I don't know that I've used principled volume. Interesting. I just must have skipped over that one. But volume scatter, I believe, is what I used. Yes. All right, so we'll plug that into volume. And I need to remember how this works. So I think the closer to black we get, yeah, that's how it works. So the closer to black, the more transparent the fog is, if I recall correctly, but it's kind of dark, isn't it? You can see that the fog is working, but maybe, I'm trying to remember how this works. Maybe it was set to blue. Maybe that's what I did. Yeah, I'm going to make it slightly blue. Yikes. But why is it? Maybe I'm not going to do that. It's kind of doing the opposite. That's strange. It's weird doing this project very recently and then things not working the way you kind of remembered. Let's just go with the regular like this. We'll go with, I mean, the desaturated dark color. Oh, I think I'm remembering now. I used a color ramp. That's right. So input, let me just look at the file. There's no shame in that. I'm going to save this file, open up the rehearsal one that I did originally because I feel like I'm doing the volume wrong. All right, so the color is in fact a very gray color. And then we just have a color ramp plugged into the density. All right, I know I was in the ballpark. Question, how about Z depth pass in compositing? Right, so you could do that, but I don't think you would be able to achieve the effect within the reference. So if we go back to that scene, this kind of fog, I don't think you could create with the Z depth because you can see that it kind of dissipates towards the ground. It's not a very clear depth situation only. It's got depth, but also shape. And that's why I'm using a sphere. And the volumetrics doesn't increase render time too terribly much. So I need to go back up to, it was more of a gray color like this. And then for the density, use a converter color ramp. Yeah, okay. Well, let's maybe zoom out, and you can. It's kind of neat to see very visualized shape of the fog. So I want it to blur out pretty well around the edges, but be kind of dense in the center. It has this kind of natural noise to it. I don't know why. It kind of looks like smoke. Kind of interesting. So the closer I go to okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting a feel for the volumetrics. I clearly have already done this before, but I don't know, getting a feel for it again. All right, so matching our reference, it's very gray at this point. Maybe we can increase the world. Let's try that, the world strength. Let's go to 2. Yeah, that certainly seems to help. I just don't remember it being so dark and gray in there. I mean, maybe we'll fix it in compositing and it'll be fine. I guess that's probably what the situation's going to be. But yeah, the reason I like to use volumetrics in this situation is because it does give you a lot of fine control over where the fog sits in your scene. So that looks pretty nice. We've got a nice depth to it. Yeah, it's making the trees kind of stand out and interplay with the atmosphere very well. What if we start to mess with compositing at this point? Because, you know, the blue shades are obviously not present. So that's going to be a very quick thing to introduce in compositing. Maybe I'll do a render for real render. I'm going to save this scene and go to 50% of 1920 by 1080. Let's make our, let's take a look at our samples. I'm going to go with 64 samples and put, turn on denoising, of course. As a still image, I highly recommend always using denoise. Let's see how long this takes. Save, please. It's nice that you can save while rendering. I don't remember being able to do that in like 3D Studio Max and stuff. Question, would your absorption node work with the fog? That's a good question. I don't know. I actually don't know. I didn't try it because I usually default to the absorption node whenever I teach stuff, but this time I wanted to actually get practice with the volumetrics. So I don't know if it would work. I'm intrigued. All right, so the render time doesn't look like it's going to take too long. What's the input to the color ramp? What's controlling its factor? So by default, I believe it's just a generated factor. I think that's always the default for a texture node that doesn't have an explicit UV or texture coordinate plugged in. I believe that's the case. Oh, well, yeah, actually. That's a good, it doesn't, that's, you bring up an interesting point. The color ramp doesn't have a purple socket, so what is, like, where are the texture coordinates coming from? I don't know. For some reason, I plugged it into the density, and it worked exactly how I wanted to. That's interesting. Meaning that in the center of the volume, it's more dense, and then towards the outside, it gets less dense. Value of 1 to 0. I thought this would get more complicated. Looks great. Simple methods to rebuild the scene. Yeah. That's, I mean, in order to do these like doodle projects, I do have to try and get to the simplest, most optimal workflow. But yeah, it sounds like in general, like maybe people did think this was going to be a little more complex. I hope that doesn't disappoint anybody. Is there a billboard option? I'm not aware of an explicit billboard option within the like particle system. I think billboard is a term used for like other, well, it's used in other softwares in games, I think especially. Is my render done? Yes. Okay, so it looks, I mean, the fog looks pretty nice. It's weird that there's a natural, oh, it's not a natural noise. Maybe that's why. It's, I think the environment image is showing up. I think that's why. But, okay, so I did want to test the compositing for where it is right now. Let me switch to the, I'll switch this to the UV or the image editor. Go to viewer node. I don't have a viewer node. Let's go to our compositing nodes. Use nodes, enable backdrop. Well, I don't want the backdrop actually. Now I can see the viewer node. Got to add the viewer node, output viewer. There we go. So now I want to see how close I can get with adjusting our compositing values. All right, so we're going to add, first thing I know, we need a lot more blue. So let's go to color and RGB curves. Increase the blue and the green, I suppose. Yeah, kind of doing the whole thing that way automatically makes it a little bit nicer. Maybe crush the whites up and keep the darks a little bit black. Already we're significantly closer. I can't wait to put the texture on the water surface. That'll make it much more believable. But I mean, I think the fog's looking okay. I do think that we're seeing way too much of the same tree. It matches the reference better, but I just don't want to take the time to find a bunch of new really skinny trees. So I think I might dial those down, increase the frequency of the other trees, and just kind of, you know, deal with what I have. But like, I like the fog. We're in the same ballpark as the render, but I do want to change the environment. I don't want that to show up at all in the render. I believe that these dark splotches are from the environment texture showing through the fog. So I'm going to change that. If we go to our shading nodes and change our context to world, I'm going to add a shader mix shader node. Well, okay, background too. Shader mix shader. And this background I want to be all the way up at 1. All my RGB values up to 1. And add a, I mean, really the HDRI, it's questionable like how much it's even doing. Like if I just crank up the 1 by itself, I mean, yeah, maybe we don't even need an HDRI. Let's just eliminate it. Why not? Be crazy. And then we can even, I mean, what about slightly blue? No, I think I'd rather do that in the compositor. Plus, we've already set up the compositor to be more that way. Strength at 2. Okay, now we're getting more there. Okay, so that eliminating the HDRI actually and replacing it with white, I think, is the better decision. So yeah, with the fog, like I guess I kept the HDRI thinking there's going to be some information, some variety to the lighting information in the texture, but like such a dense fog, you don't really need that kind of thing. All right, so what did I say I wanted to do? I want to go back to the 3D view and adjust the frequency of my image, of my trees. Oh, make sure I'm not missing any questions. Sorry about that. You could use just use a sun lamp. Is a sun lamp more efficient than just a background color? Like, does it render faster, I wonder? How do you create the water effect? Yeah, it is about time that we create that. All right, first thing I want to do is adjust the frequency of our trees, and then I'm going to adjust the water. Rotation. What am I talking about? I want to go to collection, that's right, and the use count feature. So 30 is going to be too high. How about 10 for that? All right, that does increase, that does adjust. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. I feel like it's still not quite as dense as it needs to be. Here's the seed value. I mentioned earlier that if you want to change just generally how the trees are being grown, the seed value in the emission panel is how you do that. So if you just want to randomize the pattern, click seed. And you can see that our trees will pop in different places. Okay, so I kind of turned down the tree E. Let's do it for that one as well. Both tree E's. All right. Doesn't look too bad. I need to, yeah, I need to adjust the density. Remember the trick we had to do? So if we go to wireframe, I don't think this one has a vertex group. Yeah, it doesn't. So I'm going to select the top half so that I'm going back to doing the density for controlling how the trees are grown. In other words, I don't want them on the bottom half. I just want them on the top half. So I'm selecting that set of vertices, add a new group. Let's call it density just right. That doesn't really matter. Assign 100%. And then in the particle system, it should be looking for, okay, it's not. So let's select density. There we go. Okay, cool. Our trees are looking better. Let's see, I'm in page 8. Let's see, is there something going on with the chat? I think I missed something in the chat, but consider adding a thin, dark area at the water line around. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Absolutely. Oh man, we don't have enough time, I think. Yes, we do need to add some darkness. What Jake mentioned, he's spot on about this. If we look at the texture for the landscape, right around the water's edge, the snow is, there's like the snow kind of, I think it melts like around the water's edge, you know, based on tide and stuff. And so there's a dark line that the snow does not necessarily go down all the way to the water's edge. And I do need to add that. I was planning on doing that to the material itself. I'm going to try and fast track some of this stuff. Let's start with the water texture, and then we'll start to texture the land itself. Sorry, some of the issues and confusion. You know, it wasn't a complex project overall, but like there were a lot of pieces between image plane orientation and particle systems, dynamic topology sculpting. Like there were several moving pieces that ended up kind of throwing me for a curve. The volume. So sorry about that. I know it kind of slowed down the workflow a bit. The water surface, yes. All right, so I'm going to select that plane and go back to our object shader context. And for this, we're going to start with a texture, Voronoi texture. Some of you have seen this before. I've taught this method a couple times, both in the Shader Forge Bodies of Water series, Bodies of Water chapter, but also in the latest course I did about finishing and rendering an animation. So this is going to be basically the same kind of situation. We're going to take a Voronoi texture, and I'm going to Shift-Control-Click making sure I have the Node Wrangler enabled, which is an add-on for anyone who does not know. If you don't know add-ons, Node Wrangler, make sure you have that enabled. So holding Shift Control and clicking will plug this into a viewer node so we can see the raw texture information by itself. And I need to make the scale significantly higher, like way higher. All right, so we're at 200, and now we can see that we have this pattern, which when looked at from above doesn't look super great, but from the camera angle, we're going to start to see waves appear. And I'm going to go up to like maybe 300. You know that the goal is going to try and be matching the scale. This will be very important for determining the overall scale of the scene. If we look closely at this, we can get a feel. They're very, very fine waves. All right, it's a calm kind of lake, and it's not a lot of wind, and so it kind of gives this peaceful, wintry feeling, and I want to capture that certainly. So very, very fine waves. We might have to go up to like 1,000. Yeah, maybe so. Once we have that established, I'm just going to use it as a bump map, I think. I'm not going to plug it in as a displacement. I just don't think it's going to need that. So let's go to converter. No, I'm sorry. Vector bump. I swear I never get the category correct. If I say I want to add a node from the blank category, I almost always say the wrong one first. So we're going to take the color from the Voronoi, plug it into the height of our bump map. And this will give you an idea of what the bump will look like. Strength down really low, like 0.01. Then that goes into the normal socket of our principled BSDF. And right away, we start to see pond ripples. Okay, it looks a little bit too big. So maybe 2,000. All right, that's already looking much better. What I like to do here, so that it's not the exact same pattern across the entire surface, because that's not consistent for our reference image, you can see that in the middle, there's some kind of pattern, whether it's a slight gust of wind or I don't know, maybe ducks just swam by, but like the surface of water always has a pattern to it itself. Like it's not the exact consistent pattern across the whole thing. So the way we can introduce that into our Voronoi texture is adding, let's see, Control T. That's going to add a texture coordinate node and a mapping node. I'm going to swap out the mapping node using Shift S for a vector. See, get the first category wrong. Vector and vector curves. All right, this is a technique I use a lot, so it should be very familiar to many of you. And another noise texture we're going to plug into that is, well, the noise texture. So go to texture, noise texture, and we're going to plug that in to our vector curves. And the vector curves, what we can do is start stretching out the texture in various ways. So if I pull down this graph in the X direction, let's just look at the Voronoi by itself. So as I pull this down, you'll see the texture get stretched. And we can do the same with Y. Something like this, even Z. All right, and since we're using this noise texture, if we look at that by itself, we need it to be much more broad. All right, so each of these color values, or specifically the black and white values, they are governing what the vector curves are doing in certain parts of the lake. So maybe 50. And now if we look at the Voronoi, so now you can see a very clear result of the pattern. It's a little bit too strong. All right, you can see the swirliness. So we want that effect, but we want it to be much, much less. So I need to tone back all of these vector curves. I just need slight versions of it. Like really, really slight. There we go. Let's look at that now. So we've got a little bit of pattern to the wave, and I think that that should work out really well. Little pattern to the pond. All right, cool. So we've got the water surface. We adjusted our trees. Now let's talk about darkening the edge of the terrain. Saving will be your savior. Thank you. Thank you, chat. You keep me honest. You keep me less frustrated because I end up saving, and when I don't save and it crashes, I get frustrated. So thank you. Thank you. Give me an S. Give me an A. Wow. Yeah, you have my back. I appreciate that. That is one thing for sure. You guys have my back when it comes to saving these scenes. All right, so we've adjusted the water. Now we need to do the terrain. That's right. We're going to do that very simply with a vector with vertex colors. Could not remember that for a second. All right, so I'm going to go select my object here. Let's turn off the particle system. I just don't need to see it for this. We can also maybe, let me pause the rendering. I'm going to go into local view on this guy. No, actually I won't. I'm going to go into local view on the pond and the island. That's what I want. Maybe all three of the islands. All right, I'm going to go into local view just to focus on them. Turn off the particle system for each one just to cut through some of the fat. All right. We're going to use vertex colors because that should be more than enough to do what we need. Go to not object mode, switch to vertex paint mode. And now I'm going to change the color to black. Well, first let's make sure everything is set to white. So I'm going to, let's see, tab into edit mode and select everything. And then when we go, we have the option for, what is it? Paint in vertex paint mode and set vertex colors. All right, so it must be default that it sets it to Y. And then when I set my color to black, I can just paint along the shore edge. And you can get creative to a degree. You know, if we look at our reference, maybe we can add a couple black spots, you know, up on the land itself. Let's see. Go to solid here. See what we're seeing. I guess we can't see that. That's all right. We can look from this view. All right. So you can add some black spots. Basically, you're just saying that no snow is going to be on these spots, but especially around the shore, we want to darken that. Be slightly random, or just be like hand done. You know, I'm not putting a solid crisp line like this. I want to be a little bit more randomized. Check my camera, make sure I've got what I want. That looks pretty good. Maybe just eliminate a little bit more snow for the sake of variety. Cool. Mission complete for the next 5 minutes. I'm glad that y'all can relate. You know, we all know what it's like for saving to not happen and to lose a bunch of work. So I appreciate the stress you are having for me. All right, let's do the other one over here. Vertex paint, same kind of situation. Switch to black. There is, we have solidarity when it comes to, or you guys certainly have solidarity when it comes to the saving, the preaching preaching to me to save. All right. What is that looking like? That's looking pretty good. It always looks a little bit better in the camera, in my opinion. Nice. I guess I got to do the back one too. Notice that I'm only doing the spots that you see in the camera, because I mean, why waste time doing it elsewhere? Ooh, I kind of like that little jut out, that little island right there. It's fun. That little peninsula, rather. Vertex paint, and this should be very little that we see on camera. But we can add some black spots if we want, just to eliminate some. I didn't really do that on the other one. That's fine. Just plow straight ahead, save the scene. And now we can start to plug this into a proper material. Yeah. So with our, they can all share the same material, I suppose. New material, and call it terrain, snowy terrain. Yikes, we have 5 minutes. We'll get something in 5 minutes. It won't be quite as polished as the rehearsal one, but maybe the purposes that you've learned, and I hope that's been true. Over to the shader node editor, and we got snowy terrain. Let's start off really simple. You know, we don't need really any reflection, so we'll just turn specularity off. I just don't think that's going to be, you're not going to see enough to warrant the extra calculation. So input, in fact, we could probably just swap this out for a shader diffuse BSDF. Sometimes I wonder if when you use a principled BSDF for a really simple purpose, is it slow? I need to do some testing to see if it's slow, because it's got a lot of stuff under the hood. All right, now the way we tap into the vertex colors is we add an input. Oh, there's an option there now. There you go, input vertex colors and col, C-O-L, because that's the name of the vertex colors that are added right here. So when we go into vertex paint mode, it creates that automatically. And now this we can look at by itself. If we go to render view, turn off the pause button. And why doesn't this look... Where did I put that material? Oh, here. Okay, so you should see this. There you go. I'm not making them all share the same material yet. So we can make links with the Control L button, materials. Excellent. So now we've got the black around the edges of the pond, though we don't necessarily want it to be black. We want it to be kind of like a terrain color. So I'm going to make it a little bit brown. Color, mix RGB, and we'll keep the upper end white, and the lower end will go dark brown. You can see that reflected over here in the image. Let's turn on our particle systems. I should be able to, with all 3 of our terrains selected, hold Alt and click Viewport Display, and that should turn them on all over the place. Yes, it does. All right, my dirt is not quite as dark as it should be. There we go. All right, let's see if let's see what this does. I know if I render this, that's pretty much going to take the remaining 2 minutes, but we might go a little bit over the 2-hour mark. Hope that's all right. Let's view our render and change to another slot. Render image. Fingers crossed that this looks significantly better than the other version that we did. You can go over it when you need. I want to see it done. Let's see, Jake, what were you talking about? You did mention something very valuable. I've already forgotten. Oh, consider adding, no, that's what I'm doing. I can't remember what you said, bud. Oh, that's bad. All right, so yeah, let's stop this because I didn't plug it into the diffuse BSDF, so we're not going to get any shadow information. And in fact, it actually looked kind of terrible by itself. So that's not going to be good enough. I could already tell if we zoom in the viewport, like it looks super low resolution, you know, like an old video game. So what we need to do, if we look at the reference, is there's a ton of breakup along the surface, right? Like the undulation in the forest floor is going to create a very high frequency detail of between the snow and no snow. So we need to create that ourselves. Let's try that with let's try and get a similar effect from a texture, noise texture. All right, we know that the scale needs to be pretty large. Let's try 1,000. Maybe not that large. Shift A, let's add a converter color ramp. Let's crush this value. All right, so we're getting, I'm trying to get in the ballpark of that kind of breakup. Let's try 300. We might need to do a couple different layers to be the best. Like if we start with, okay, bear with me. I'm going to start with 2 different layers. So we're going to have a broad breakup layer like this. Let's increase the detail to 10. All right, so this broad breakup layer, let's mix it in over here with our vertex colors. All right, so if we look at that, yeah, we want to, how do we want to do this? I want to duplicate the mix node, and I think I want to add it, yes. Because if I add it, it's only going to appear in the dark areas. So basically, I'm just adding little bits of snow over top of the dark ground. Change that to add, or maybe screen. All right, so now you can see that little bit of breakup is isolated to the dark areas. Excellent. Then we can adjust maybe how, well, oh, I don't want it as, no, that's right. Sorry. For the screen, I had this noise texture going into the factor, and that's not what I wanted. What about an overlay? Let's try screen again. I think screen is going to be, yeah, that's going to be ultimately what I want. Maybe make the black a little bit stronger. We still have a very like broad fall off, so I need a second layer of this material to finalize the effect, I think. Yikes. We're getting closer. Let's add a second noise layer. Save, Control S. Thank you. That really is helpful. I appreciate you guys doing that. It would be a major buzzkill if I get to the very end, the last few minutes, and then, I lost like 10 minutes worth of work. That would have been really lame. It happened before on stream, and I'll never forget. And I guess you guys didn't either. Main restaurant drink, the save. All right, so the second layer I want to be higher frequency. Let's look at that by itself. I really should be looking at the terrain all by itself too. That should be enough. And then I will duplicate and do an overlay. I think the overlay should eliminate like this. Excellent. That's what I'm looking for. That looks pretty good. Right, and now this can go into the diffuse BSDF. So yeah, when I increased the size of the noise texture, it made it really, really fine. And then making the blend pattern an overlay, if you can see that before and after, it just eliminated, it kind of swapped out the broad gradient. Oh no, I'm moving on my islands. It swapped out the broad gradient for intricate breakup. So that actually, I think, looks much better. Sweet. All right, let's do a render and maybe wrap this thing up. Control S and render. Thanks for sticking with me a little bit longer than anticipated. We're only 4 minutes over, but by the time we talk about our restaurant, our Blender restaurant meal names, we'll probably be 10 or 15 minutes over. Yeah, I think this should turn out pretty nice. Have you guys learned anything? If you have, then I can be okay with my result being a little less than what I wanted, as long as you guys are learning things. Yes, I have not forgotten the food puns. Thank you for reminding me. Actually, yeah, I might do this at the end, this kind of competition, silliness at the end, so that incentivizes people to stay. But yeah, if you learned anything, say what it was. If it was at least a little nugget from this stream, I love to hear that. So if you didn't, that's fair. That's fine. One thing that I do like about this version is I added that little bit of rotation randomness, which I didn't do in the first version. Everything's just straight up. But in this version, there, some trees are kind of leaning over, and I think that adds another touch of realism. Awesome, Jake. You've never tried using cards before, and now I know. Excellent. I wanted to see what it would look like if to have like a very subtle camera move, like over top of the lake, like a drone shot over, just slowly moving across the surface of the lake. But I wonder if the illusion of the trees would hold up. I'm curious about that. All right, that's not looking too bad. I think I need to adjust some of my levels in compositing, but overall, it's looking okay. If we kind of zoom out to see this, and then go back to the render window, it's in the ballpark. It could definitely be polished a little bit more. Let me go ahead and adjust our compositing, because I do think that's some low-hanging fruit for adjustment. What am I looking at? Image editor viewer node. Excellent. Compositing. There we go. I think that looks a bit better. All right, we're matching fairly well. But yeah, the things that I missed, I did not get around to, included, when you do a bigger version, a bigger render of this scene, it helped to enable adaptive displacement, adaptive subdivision for micro displacement. It did help to add that to the terrain, but since we just did a smaller render, you really can't tell. But I think it looks pretty good. I think it looks pretty good. Cool. All right, well, we'll stop with that. I'm going to save, and I'll share out this file. I've started to get in the habit with these project streams to save out the source files and share those. Awesome. So since we're done, to get some XP points, I mentioned it at the beginning, and I'll mention it again. We in the pre-stream chat, we got into a fun conversation about if we started a Blender-themed or computer graphics-themed, let's just say Blender-themed restaurant, what would some of the dishes be called? So if you're still with us and you want to shout out a name, come up with a dish name, put that in the chat, and I'll give you 15 XP points. I'll go through and manually add those to all your points. And then my personal favorite, I will give 30 points. All right. So the one that I think is the most clever, stuck out to me the most for whatever reason, will be a little bit favored. Get a little bit more points. So Thanks for watching, guys. I do hope you guys learned. I think some people did, and that's a victory. Makes it worth it. So yeah, let me see those Blender-themed restaurant meals. And once I start seeing some... Okay, yeah, I'm still going with Node spaghetti and meatballs. Spaghetti and meatballs. I like it. Yeah, I do like that. There maybe was a slightly better Metaballs one from who? Someone did a Metaball sub division sandwich which I thought was extremely clever. Nice, they're starting to meshy dishes. Oh, nice. Enchiladas using that ant add-on. I see you getting in there and embedding some subtle Blender stuff. I like it. Chicken Suzanne, very nice. Subsurf and Turf. That one's good. Oh, it was from John down here, actually. You're very welcome, John. Thanks for watching. Cornell ice cream cone. Excellent. Yeah, that's still in the Blender realm. It's in the computer graphics realm. Nice. These are fun. Yeah, Aaron, you did several of them, so I know that you had some good ones. I'm going to go back and check in the first, early on in the chat. But by asking you guys to do it at the end, it can all be somewhat aggregated in the same spot. Awesome. All right. Well, yeah. For whoever wants to do that, feel free to keep posting those. I'll leave once I see the chat kind of die down, I'll end the stream like officially. But for now, that's going to be all from me. I will see you next week for modeling a sled. Continuing with the winter theme, we're going to focus on hard surface modeling. We're going to build a sled, one that if you're American, I guess you've probably ridden on in your lifetime. A very iconic sled. So thank you guys. I will see you next week and have a great rest of your Tuesday.